Hi, I'm Lisa Goldberg, and welcome back to the Right Mind, Right Weight Summit. I'm here today with Gregg McBride. Gregg is a film and TV writer-producer, and he is the author of 2 books, Weightless, My Life as a Fat Man and How I Was Escaped, and Just Stop Eating So Much. And he's also the founder of the very popular blog, Just Stop Eating So Much. Welcome, Gregg. Great to have you here.
Thank you. I love that introduction. Thanks. I'm like, wow, he sounds great.
Oh, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. So if any of you watching right now have seen my other summits, you've seen Gregg before, and I love having him on as a guest because of his journey. Gregg has started his journey where so many of you are right now, or have been, and you know, if you're in that diet yo-yo cycle, you could relate to his journey. But Gregg has come out on the other side of that struggle, and he lives his life as a person who doesn't struggle, even though, you know, he might have his moments, but he doesn't struggle with food, weight, and eating any longer. And he's such a positive influence and such an inspiration. And I want everybody listening here to see that you can change, you can lose the weight, and you can keep it off once you lose it. So with that being said, welcome, Gregg. Thank you for being here today. And tell us a little bit about how you got started and your journey to where you are today.
Well, it's been a crazy life. And I'll start out, I always love showing people, whether you've seen me before or not, I always like to show my man boobs. This is me. This is when I graduated from college. I weighed 450 pounds over, actually, the scale that I weighed myself on didn't go that high. It would read ERR. And when I looked it up in the manual, that meant error. So I'm like, yeah, no kidding. But I remember being overweight in first grade and was on every conceivable diet between then and up until after college. And when I was very young, I suffered a lot of child abuse and went through some things that really we all go through, various forms of challenges in our life. So I certainly don't count that as anything different that other people have gone through. But again, in first grade, it became clear that I was gaining weight, I was overweight. And so my parents took me to the doctor trying to do the right thing. And the doctor promptly put me on a diet in first grade. And my parents even went as far as to lock cabinets with crackers and cookies and things like that. So I started taking money out of my dad's wallet and going to the grocery store. And I would literally hide gallons of ice cream in my bedroom closet. And I had a little method. I would wrap them in tinfoil so they would not, make too much of a mess while I could wait until I could get in there and safely eat it. So I was very food obsessed, and I was learning that on-off thing that so many of us struggle with when it comes to dieting at a very early age. And at the same time, I was looking for that thing we're all looking for, the magic wand, So every now and then I would try maybe more of a doctor type of diet when, and back then that was cottage cheese and a burger patty. So we know so much more now about healthy eating. But I would also do the crazy diets too, the cabbage soup, the whatever it is, eat a certain kind of food every day for a week. And, sometimes I would lose a few pounds. And other times I would get to about hour 3 and start eating again. So it was just this diet roller coaster, which resulted in my weighing over 450 pounds by the time I graduated from college. And at that weight, I couldn't even talk on the phone without being out of breath. I would actually, thank goodness, the phone I had at the time had a mute button. And so whenever somebody else was talking, I would hit mute because you would think I was trying to have phone sex with you. I was just breathing so heavily. Yes, I'm that guest, everyone. So buckle your seatbelts. It's going to be fun. But anyway, and also too, I went on a date once in high school with my girlfriend at the time, and I broke the movie theater seat in front of hundreds of people, well, what seemed like hundreds of people, and it was just mortifying. And I was always the class clown. I was writing back then too, so I would always laugh stuff off, but on the inside, I was in a lot of pain, and I think that my excess weight was a reflection of that. And so then after college, I still struggled a bit. And I eventually realized that, I was carrying around two kinds of weight, one of which was physical, of course, and everybody could see it. And I felt like the world was judging me. And in some cases they were, but I was judging myself. And I was still struggling with a lot of the abuse that had led to some of the overeating. And I realized at a certain point that I had to get rid of the mental weight before I was going to get rid of the physical weight. And along about the same time that I was doing that, I became very conscious about my eating, about my body. It's funny how we can not realize like that we're hitting mute so people don't hear that we're winded from a phone call. I was really just out of touch. And I know for myself, I would eat to the point of physical pain. So I didn't have to think about my being lonely or that I, was wearing a 60-inch belt that was fraying in the last loop, or that I didn't have any kind of romantic life or whatever it is. There was always these excuses. And so I would eat to excess to a point where I would be in so much pain that that's all I could think about. But when I got more conscious about letting go of the past, just kind of breathing it in and accepting it, and then listening to my body, I started to eat healthy. And as our beautiful friend Lisa will tell us, you can eat anything. You don't have to ban certain food groups. It's about healthy portions. It's about healthy foods, healthy choices. I know we've heard all of it before, but guess what? I dropped over 250 pounds in about a year's period of time without cutting out food, without pills, without surgery, without this kind of craziness that we all really know and makes our lives torturous. It makes it unlivable, right? We can't meet friends for dinner. We can't do this. We can't do that. And, at first I was fairly strict because I couldn't be trusted. I didn't know what proper portion control was. So I was following a plan. And, my first version of exercise was walking around the block. And then I read somewhere that you should actually pump your arms. So I started to do that. And then, hold in your stomach and make it about your core. And these were all baby steps. But again, when I kind of dropped the pretend stuff, looking for that quick fix, my body responded, and it responded beautifully. And as I detail in my books, I did some yo-yoing. I reached my goal weight of around 175 pounds for me. And then I did some yo-yoing after that because I had sort of bought that message that we get sometimes in the media that, dieting is like a light switch. Okay, once you get it all figured out and then you're done, right? Back to ice cream I go. Well, I started gaining weight again. But again, that gave me a great opportunity to be conscious, to, realize I can have maybe a reasonable portion of ice cream once a week, not every night, not a gallon. But again, I was getting away from that philosophy of, the last meal. Like, oh, this is the last time I'm ever going to have ice cream, so I better have, this much of it. And again, just thinking, living, eating, and also finding out that when I wasn't so laser focused on food, on denial, on all that kind of stuff, that life started happening around me. And that's why now, as you're all realizing, you cannot shut me up, but that's because the truth to wellness and feeling happy and being happy and feeling good when you wake up in the morning and not having to put your voice on mute when you're on a phone call, it's really simple stuff. And it's giving yourself permission to be happy. That's a lot of what it is. And so that's why I love Lisa, and I'm a recurring guest on her TV show.
Well, let me go back to something, because here's what I know a lot of people do. There's a lot of people that use food to numb the pain. And so what you were saying was that you ate so much food to the point where you were in physical pain, and then all you did was think about the pain. And so I want people to realize that if that's what they're doing, they're using food as a distraction for the other things that have caused them pain in their life. And so, that's something, and Gregg, just said that once he stopped doing that, he started to use food for nourishment and not cause, it was self-inflicted pain, right, Gregg? So you were kind of inflicting it. And then also another point I want to bring out is that you said you couldn't be trusted. You couldn't trust yourself. Could you speak a little bit about that? Because I hear so often, I don't trust myself, especially for those that have been going in a positive direction. they don't trust themselves to not go back. So could you speak a little bit into, I don't trust myself, and what that was like for you and how you changed it?
Yeah. You know, a lot of it has to do with what we might be eating or how we might be living. I know that when I was, weighing over 450 pounds, I spent a lot of time eating fast food, junk food, whether it was from the grocery store or actually from a fast food place. And, a lot of those foods are just full of chemicals and sodium and sugars and all these things that really affect our taste buds. So when I first started, really making a commitment to eating healthy, everything tasted like cardboard. And so that's where I talk about that I couldn't trust myself. Also, too, I didn't know what a proper portion was. I was somebody that was used to eating a gallon of ice cream after a huge meal. Okay, I would stuff it all down like we just spoke about. So I really had to relearn the art of portion control. And even today, there's certain foods like cereal. I've got to get out that measuring cup because to me, cereal is sold in a single serving size. I love it. So I know I can't be trusted even now. And so I get out that measuring cup. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, that's a tool, right? Just like we use tools for everything else. When we change a tire, it's not like I'm going to do this by myself. We get out whatever we need to change tires. I wish I could tell you that tool, but I'm not familiar with it. Anyway, and so that's what I talk about with not trusting myself, is I would follow guidelines, healthy eating guidelines, not crazy eating guidelines like cut out certain foods or only eat this before noon or whatever it is, proper portions, healthy foods, and realizing that in several weeks, your taste buds are going to change. And I love to mention Fuji apples. I love Fuji apples. A good Fuji apple bought, from the farmer's market or wherever, nice and fresh, is as good as candy, is as good as ice cream. But if you're somebody that's been eating junk food, if you've been perpetuating that kind of on-off thing, the first time you eat an apple, you might be like, this tastes like crap. And it does. It tastes like crap to your taste buds. And so you've got to relearn the taste of food, just like you will learn, portion control. And that doesn't mean you lose your taste for ice cream, I assure you. But it does mean that all of a sudden you could be eating a salad with cherry tomatoes and be like, my gosh, these are as sweet as jelly beans. So it's really just kind of reconnecting with good foods, good healthy foods. Same with ice cream, by the way. As we all know, there's ice creams that are made with all natural ingredients, and there are ice creams made with all kinds of artificial flavors. So what are you putting into your body? Is it nourishing your body, even if it's ice cream? Is it 4 ingredients that your body knows what to do with, and you're going to get up in the morning and take an extra walk? Or is it something with a whole bunch of names we can't pronounce that your body doesn't know what to do with? You feel awful the next morning. So that's where trusting yourself kind of lends itself to listening to your body, paying attention to how you feel. How do I feel after I eat this? How do I feel the next morning after I've eaten a huge meal? How do I feel after I've had a single scoop of ice cream and then gone for a walk in the park? I feel like a supermodel. That's how I feel. And I know that a week later, or whenever, I can have another scoop of ice cream, and I'm going to do it out in the public. I'm not going to do it at my kitchen counter hiding from the world, like a vampire afraid from the sun.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have no short answers. I realize.
Well, but here's the thing. So healthy whole foods, nourishing your body, really feeding yourself and taking care of yourself. And, you and I have had a lot of conversations where we talk about self-care is so important. And I often say when I work with people, why would you choose something that makes you feel bad longer than it makes you feel good? And so it's really about choosing you over the food, which clearly you have learned to do. And so the title of the summit is Right Mind, Right Weight. And I truly believe that when people change their mindset and become more mindful and the way they think about food and eating and changing their relationship with food and themselves, then they could make those shifts, change how they eat. Not to say that you need to give up your favorite foods, and the weight will slowly come off. And if you stay with that, you can maintain your weight. So for you to lose over 200 pounds, and you've kept it off for, it's got to be more than a decade at this point.
It's almost 2 decades, but I like to say just more than a decade, because in LA, we don't talk about age, Lisa. So let's be quiet about that, please.
Okay, that's a deal. But can you please talk to us a little bit about the mindset shifts that you had to make? Because we all know losing weight sometimes is the easy part. We follow the plan, we lose the weight. But if we don't change our mindset around what we're doing while that weight is coming off, the weight will probably just come back. And you've managed to keep it off for a little more than a decade.
Yeah. So, I'm going to go back to my man boob picture. I always tell people I'm less embarrassed about this and more embarrassed about this. What is this, you ask? When I weighed that weight, I went and got a perm in my hair. And I joke about it now, but I also marvel at it because at that size, I was literally afraid to leave my apartment. I remember one time I was shopping for groceries late at night. I thought that was safe. And a mother walked by with her daughter, crowded aisle, and the daughter pointed at me. I had a beard at the time, like in the picture, and said, "Mommy, why does that man have boobs?" Everyone turned and looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like Quasimodo. I had to get out of there so fast. I abandoned the cart. I left. It was terrible. But as afraid as I was about going out, as scared as I was to be judged, as much as I didn't want to look in the mirror, somewhere inside there was hope because I went and got a perm to my hair. That was one of the few things that I could affect was my hair. And I look back now at that perm and I'm like, wow, that guy was really trying. And so when we talk about becoming less food focused, another thing that we can do is find ways to live life in the moment, just as we are. This isn't after, a lot of people are like, oh, once I lose weight, I'm going to do this. No. Right now, you could make an appointment for a manicure pedicure, guys or girls, choose your color wisely. But that's something that you can do to take care of yourself. And you can rock the best fingernails of anyone in your town, or you can get your hair done, or you can go to a store that carries larger sizes and pick out something that's flattering at your size. And that's what we need to do. We need to take the focus off of food as a reward, take the focus off of food. Food is one aspect of life. And listen, I love food. Lisa teases me about my posts on Instagram all the time because I'm always posting food. But that's not the only aspect of life. And so you want to at the beginning of your journey, you might only be able to affect your hair or your nails or something like that. But find those ways of loving yourself that can then remind you and validate you about how great you are, even at this moment. And that then starts to take the focus off of food and helps us to realize that we can live a more balanced life. And that can do a lot for being successful on any diet. And skip ahead 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, 12 weeks, it's all individualized. I like to point out that when I lost my weight, I was literally under 29. I still claim to be, by the way, but back then I was. And so that's why it came off a little quicker. So, your age, your metabolism, your physical ability, it's all going to affect how you lose weight. So don't compare yourself to me. Don't compare yourself to one of your friends, in a support group, whatever it is. It's your own journey. But there's going to come a point that you put on your pants, your skirt, whatever it is, and you don't have to say a Hail Mary to button whatever it is. And I'm telling you, that moment, you're like, wow, there is something to life other than ice cream. And I remember there came a time, I'm not sure exactly when it was, maybe 6 months into my weight loss journey, when I was really doing it for all the right reasons. I got to walk into a Gap. Now, I'm somebody that has always had to shop in big size stores. Even when I was little, my parents, we lived overseas. My dad was in the Air Force. So it was always the Sears Big and Tall catalog. Like that's where I was getting my great clothes from. So to be able to walk into a Gap and walk back to the jeans, and yeah, it was for a 42 waist, but I was somebody that had been wearing a 60 plus size waist. And so to be able to pull jeans off from this store that you see in every mall that you're in, I could swear I could hear the Alleluia chorus. And those moments are so golden. And that's what you all have the potential to experience. And, we've all heard this 1,000 times, no matter, when you've tried dieting, there's that old saying, nothing tastes as good as being thin feels. And I think Lisa and I would both change it to being how healthy feels. But it's really true, like to be able to sit down and not think, oh my gosh, when can I get these jeans off? It's amazing. And all of a sudden, when you're out to dinner, you're like, you know what? I ordered fried calamari and it is delicious, but I'm not going to eat the whole portion because I love how my jeans feel right now. And I want my jeans to feel this way tomorrow. So it's learning about things in your life other than food. And I know this has been a long-winded way around your question, Lisa, but again, so often we eat to a point where we're not experiencing life, or we're using the fact that maybe somebody made fun of us or our fear of that to keep us indoors more often. And we're almost using food as a crutch, and we're certainly not enjoying it. You know, we're really not. The food isn't good when you're in your bathrobe on the couch forcing down ice cream in that kind of scenario. You know, it's just, it's self-imposed torture. And so it's a matter of escaping that. And it might start with a pedi mani or mani-pedi. It might start with getting a perm. It might start with buying a dress in size 30, but it's a beautiful dress and it has some great flowers on it. Whatever it is, do that for yourself and start to take the focus off of food.
So first of all, that's excellent advice, because it's about doing what makes you feel good. And when we feel good, we want to keep feeling good, because why would we ever want to give up that good feeling? And so what I really want to ask you, because I get asked this all the time, but maybe you could share what your experience was. So when you bought those pants from the Gap and you felt like over the moon because you actually purchased pants from the Gap, if you had a moment where something happened, where you hit one of those bumps in the road, where you wanted your old reflex pops in and you want to turn to food, because I so often hear, so I like exactly what you're saying. I try to instill in the people that I work with to do what makes you feel good. Hold on to that good feeling. It's not a good trade-off. A bag of chips, a gallon of ice cream for yourself, or for not fitting into the clothes that you finally got into. It's not a good trade-off. What do you tell people? Because so many people are just like, what do I do in the moment? Because in the moment I say, I don't care, which we know is not the truth. But what have you done when you've wanted to get the reflexes to go back to the old behavior, to stay connected to getting in those pants from the Gap?
Well, I think, you know, when we hit a bump in the road, I always like to say one cookie did not make us fat. And one bump in the road did not make us fat and does not keep us fat. You know, even today, I might go out to dinner and have a little more than I intended to have, but I don't let that turn into, well, that's it for my healthy eating for this week. I'm going to wait until next Monday or the beginning of next month or January 1st. That was always a favorite of mine. Until January 2nd. So, you know, it's to not let those bumps happen. If you know, I live here in Los Angeles, and I have friends that are actors, and they're very conscious of what they eat, but they hit bumps in the road too. You know, we all hit that stuff. The trick is to not let that then signal a big disaster. And so again, I think of the word consciousness, and I love keeping a journal. In fact, I didn't plan this. I'm making noise. But I have this journal that I write in daily. And sometimes it's just like, that's one day's thing right there. I got to close it fast because it says I have a crush on Lisa. But I don't want her to know. But, you know, I love the idea of writing in a journal, because let's say that you do eat something you don't want to. Let's say you've eaten to excess and you feel terrible. Write that down. And I'm not saying write down what you ate necessarily, but write down how you're feeling. Even the desperate parts, like I don't think I can go on, I don't think I'm worthy, I don't. But then similarly, on a day when you've really, you know, you've walked around the block several times, you've eaten healthy, also write down how you feel and start to compare how you feel. And, you know, you hear people talk about this all the time, like, oh, I would love to have 3 drinks, but I have 1 because the next morning I don't want to feel awful, you know? So it's really, again, becoming very conscious about what you're eating and how you feel. And by being conscious of that also, you're going to realize that there's so many good feelings you get that have nothing to do with food. And again, this is coming from somebody that loves to eat, okay? But there's a big, beautiful world out there to be lived in and enjoyed at no matter what size you are now. And so you really want to take the focus off of food. Let that nourish your body. Let that give you nutrition. Let that give you some enjoyment. But what's after that? Is it a walk? Is it watching your favorite TV show? Is it playing with your dog or a grandchild? Whatever it is. find those rewards and write about them and learn what kind of brings you to life. And by taking that focus off of food, you're then going to see that it doesn't, you don't become so obsessive about it.
Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. And kind of what I hear you saying is that people need to lose that dieter's mentality of I ate too much or I ate a few extra cookies, so therefore I blew it, and let me kind of just like rummage through the whole kitchen and spend 6 days eating terribly because, you know, I'll just start on Monday. So that's a dieter's mentality. And you're saying that it didn't take, you know, one bad day of eating to get us this way and just kind of get right back on track. If, you know, and that's where your journaling helps, you know, put the feelings in the book and leave them there.
Right, absolutely. And these days, of course, there's even, you know, we have our phones, another visual, where, you know, there's notes apps and things like that. So you don't necessarily have to carry around a journal, or send yourself an email and print it out and stick it in your journal. And I know that this all, to some people, it's going to seem, oh, that's, you know, that's kind of trite, that sort of thing. But try it and see if it works for you. Because again, a lot of us who have had the dieter's mentality or have it, myself included, even now, we know we have to be more conscious. We have to be conscious about what we're eating. We have to be conscious about how we're feeling when we eat. We have to be conscious about how we're, you know, how we feel in clothes. But that kind of consciousness helps us to start enjoying life more. And again, that's right now. It's not when you lose 3 pounds. It's not when you lose 10 pounds. It's not when you reach your goal weight. You're taking time to watch this right now. You're participating in that summit. So you know what that tells me? You've got very good taste for watching this one, but it also tells me that you're committed. You have what it takes. And so there's going to be days that you mess up. There's days I mess up. We all mess up, right? Why? That doesn't have to stop our momentum, though. It doesn't have to stop our overall momentum. We don't have to shame ourselves. And if we learn from it, like, wow, eating that, whatever it was, I feel like crap mentally. I feel like crap physically. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to stop at, you know, a half cup of potato chips next time, or whatever it is. You know, you have to decide what that is, but find a love of life right now, even in the smallest things.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice, because I think people forget the small things. And oftentimes we talk about gratitude, being grateful for what you have right now. Look around you and look at the people in your life, and just look at your life. And oftentimes, you know, we see the negative versus the positive. So if you look about and you're grateful for what you have in your life in the moment. And something that I also learned recently was, you know, sometimes we say, I have to do this and I have to do that. If we change it to, I'm blessed to, everything feels different and better and somewhat of a gift. So a lot of this creating change in mindset shifts is changing the language and the messaging that you give to yourself. And that messaging is so powerful when you give yourself direction. As Gregg was saying, what he tells himself to do, and and the direction that he takes, and the tools that he uses with his journal and his mindfulness is really, if you agree, Gregg, a lot of what's allowing you to maintain this tremendous amount of weight that you've lost all of these years.
Absolutely. And I love what you just shared. It reminds me of, you know, there's days I go to the gym and I'm like, oh, I have to do my workout. And I always do it. But on a day where maybe I wake up and I'm sick or I have an injury and can't go to the gym, it's like somebody took away my bag of candy. Like, I'm like, I got to get to the gym. And so that also is an example of shifting your perspective of things, you know. And I always, random example, but I always marvel at 3-legged dogs. And I'm a dog owner myself. My dog has 4 legs, but at the dog park, we'll see 3-legged dogs just playing and happy and joyful, and life is fantastic. Okay, if that were me, I'd be like, hey, everybody, I only have 3 legs. I should have 4, like, you know, just whining about it. And so you look at this, you know, little creature that isn't thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me. They're just living and loving life. And it's the same with if you still have some excess weight on you. You know what? You're beautiful, you're handsome, and you're making choices. And I know you are, again, because you're watching this. You're making choices that are informing you about making healthy, positive changes in your life. these changes aren't going to change who you are. They're just going to help the who you are blossom more. And again, that's where we get into this, you know, the dieter mindset of before and after. We are always enduring, always. Even now, I have to think about food. I choose to think about food. It is a blessing, not a curse. So you can be right where I'm at right now. And I promise you, when I hear from people via email or in Lisa's seminars or in her classes, I learn as much as I hopefully am sharing, and you can learn from me too. We are all in this together. And the sooner you accept how perfect you are right now, the sooner these positive changes can happen. And that includes, like what Lisa was saying, is think about all these simple pleasures that we take for granted. And that if we start to change our perspective, that's going to affect everything in our lives.
Well, I love that. And so I'm going to leave people with the thought of, you are perfect as you are right now. So I want people to take that in. And while they're taking that in, I want you to tell us a little bit about, I know you have a great gift for the listeners today. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. And by the way, I want everyone to know that while Lisa was talking, I looked at all of you, and you all really are perfect. And believe me, I was trying to see if I could just see one person. I'm like Mr. Rogers. I could see out there. And everyone's perfect. I judged. Trust me, I did. So y'all really are perfect. Anyway, to the free gift. It's actually something I love to share. It's called Just Stop Mindless Eating. And it's about everything we've talked about right now with Lisa. And that is just becoming more conscious about the food, more conscious about how you feel about yourself. And this is a free ebook that you can download. And the thing I love most about it is it has actual forms in it that you can print out and fill out, or you can just look at it on your computer screen and sort of think through your answers. But it really just helps you shift that perspective. And that's what we've really been talking about today. If we have one takeaway word, I would say it's shift, and that gets us into that right mind that Lisa is so great to remind us about. And so we're just shifting our perspective slightly. And so we may look at food differently. We may look at dinner differently. We might look at exercise differently. And the best part is when we look in the mirror, we can look at ourselves differently. Because if you have somebody you don't care about, do you really want them to change? You don't care, right? You just don't. And I don't want them to change either. They're not very nice. But you want to love yourself. The people that you want to help, whether it's your children or your parents or your friends or your siblings, whatever it is, we can all think of someone we really, really love and want to see make positive change in their life. That's how we have to think about ourselves. And so Just Stop Mindless Eating helps you to kind of analyze where you are, how you feel about food, and how you feel about yourself.
Well, thank you, Gregg. That's an excellent gift. And you received an email this morning announcing Gregg's interview. So the link was at the bottom of the email. So be sure, if you didn't download it already, to go and download Gregg's great free gift. And Gregg, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's always, always, always a pleasure to have you here. And I truly think that so many people listening today could not only resonate with your story, but could feel inspired that they could create the changes and lose the weight and keep it off for good. So thank you so much for sharing. And again, it's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you, and you have a great day, Gregg. Bye.
Bye.